was an aspiring individual who wanted to make a change and an impact. Amelia was known for encouraging women to stand up to the constricting social norms and strive towards new opportunities. She is commonly known for being the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean and breaking barriers for women. Amelia's accomplishments, especially her Atlantic journey, was impactful because she was always compared to Charles Lindbergh, the first man to non-stop fly across the Atlantic the year before. This was considered a broken barrier because it was the first time a woman, nonetheless a man, achieved something like this in aviation.
Amelia Earhart was born in Atchison, Kansas on July 24, 1897. Amelia and her sister, Muriel, lived with her grandparents quite frequently. This was because her mother, Amelia Otis, was busy dealing with their dad, who was an alcoholic. She and her sister had lots of fun at their grandparents'. They often played on their sled. The family was finally reunited when Amelia was 10. It was hard for her father, Edwin, to find employment. This had recently been a problem as well, and it was causing the family to move around. Amelia attended many schools. She didn't do great in academics and did not have many friends, although she excelled at science and athletics. Amelia and her sister were moved to Chicago in 1915 when Amy divorced with Edwin again. Amelia became more independent when her father was unable to care for her. After high school, Amelia visited her sister in Toronto. Amelia worked as a nurse's aide after seeing hurt soldiers after World War I. Through this experience, she got to know many of the patients and grew fond of the aviators. Amelia took medical studies at the Columbia University in 1919. She dropped out a year later to be with her reunited parents.
Amelia Earhart went on her first flight in 1920. Her first flight instructor was Nita Snook, one of the first women to graduate the Curtis School of Aviation, who she started training with in 1921. To pay for the lessons, she worked as a filing clerk at the Los Angeles Telephone Company for a while. Earhart officially got her flying license in December of 1922. This was known as the National Aeronautics Association license. In 1923, Earhart received her international pilot's license, being the 16th woman to do so. Amelia bought her first plane later in the year and called it the Canary. After she received her license, she went to the Sierra Aerodrome in California to take part in her first flight exhibition.
In 1922, she set her first record by becoming the first woman to fly above 14,000 feet alone. Then, in 1932, she became the first female to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, and after Charles Lindbergh, the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic. She left on May 20th and arrived at her destination a day later. When she returned to the United States, she received the Distinguished Flying Cross, an award given to her by Congress. She was the first woman to receive this reward. Later the same year, Amelia made a non-stop flight across the United States, which made her the first woman to do this. In this flight, she started in Los Angeles, then later landed in New Jersey. This resulted in her becoming the first person to fly solo to the United States from Hawaii. Amelia was always looking for opportunities to encourage women in the field of aviation. In 1929, Earhart placed third in the All-Women's Air Derby. This inspired her to create the 99s, a female pilot organization to empower young women. This organization continues to exist and represent female pilots around the world.
Nita Snook was also one of the pioneering women in the age of breaking barriers for women in the aviation field. She was the one who taught Earhart how to fly, and her achievements can be overlooked at times. Snook was a flight instructor at California's Kinner Field in 1920, when Snook had already been flying for 4 years. Snook met Earhart later that year in December and was pleased by her eagerness to fly, her knowledge, and optimism, and began working with Earhart in January. Over the years of the two flying together, they became quite close and fond of each other. They often had philosophical conversations. Even their disagreements were remembered fondly. Amelia was mentioned many times in Snook's autobiography, I Taught Amelia to Fly, and brought up the times she shared with Earhart. Years later, on January 26, 1929, Earhart wrote a letter to Snook regarding the old times they had shared together. She explains in her letter that she hopes they cross paths in the future, and she hopes to hear from her again soon. Nita Snook left the field of aviation in 1922 after getting married to William Southern. Snook had already been retired when Earhart disappeared and never got to reminisce about the old days with Earhart.
On November 10, 1936, Earhart wrote a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt about her world flight that she was planning. She was asking him for help to use his Navy so she could refuel her plane over Midway Island. She said that she was planning on flying in March. She said there was a problem with the jump westward from Honolulu. The distance there to Tokyo was 3,900 miles. She was discussing with the Navy to possibly refuel her plane in the air right over the island. Amelia said that she was in a land plane. The seaplane facilities at Wake, Guam, and others would be of no use to her. She said that some new seaplanes are currently being created for use by the Navy, and they will be taken by boat to Hawaii. She said that she wanted to practice refueling operations in the air over San Diego with one of these aircrafts. She said the Navy has been getting so progressive and it's pioneering that a project like this, she adds, even involving a mere woman, may catch the eyes of the Navy's personnel. She is doing the flight for the sole reason of her wanting to, and she feels that women now and then have to do things to show what women can do.
Amelia Earhart went on her flight around the world on June 1st of 1937. This was her second time attempting to fly across the globe and become one of the first pilots to do this. On this mission, she flew with her navigator, Fred Noonan. They flew from North America to South America to Africa to Asia, and after they stopped in New Guinea, they went to Howland Island. This was the last place they were seen alive. Many criticized this flight and claimed it was an impulsive joyride because the rescue mission cost taxpayers millions of dollars that even President Roosevelt had to get involved in. It was on July 2nd when they reported it to the United States Coast Guard that they were low on fuel. A little later, they lost radio connection with the Itasca. The Itasca was a Coast Guard cutter near Howland. They were there to help guide her safely to the ground. Amelia's final message was recorded at 8:43 in the morning. Her final word was, "Wait." There was no trace of Amelia and Fred Noonan afterwards.
Most believe Earhart's plane crashed due to the lack of fuel and then sunk to the bottom of the sea. However, there have been multiple theories about Earhart's disappearance. A popular theory currently being researched is that Noonan and Earhart lived on a remote island called Nkumaroro Island for several days before their death. Items like clothing supplies and even bones were found on this island to support this theory, and it's currently being researched by scientists. There has even been a photo discovered that shows Earhart and Noonan on the island, presumably captured by the Japanese, which many believe could also be a reason the two disappeared. There was a letter issued by the Secretary of State of Japan that regarded the search for Amelia, who many believed crashed near Japan. The Japanese government could not find any trace of her. Since many believed that Earhart's plane sunk to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, a team of researchers led by the same man, Robert Ballard, who found the Titanic, is going to find out the truth. There are books about Amelia and her accomplishments, and even her death, such as the book Amelia Lost, The Life and Disappearance. Many news shows and researchers are trying to find out more information about this case using the evidence found about Amelia's death, and still to this day, no one has found the true cause of Amelia's death yet.
Amelia Earhart was an astonishing woman for her time. She has done everything from receiving a National Geographic Award to becoming the first female to ever fly across the world solo. If Earhart had finished this flight and continued to make flight achievements, there is no doubt that she would have had even more remarkable accomplishments. Earhart inspired so many young women during her time, and that is unforgettable. Even if she was never found, still to this day, we credit her with many first-time achievements and for helping break gender roles and barriers for women. She will most certainly be remembered for the time that is to come.